I used to come into the coffee shop at the same time every morning because no one talked to me there. That was the appeal. Same chipped mug behind the counter, same humming refrigerator, same table by the window that always rocked if you leaned too hard on one leg. I liked knowing exactly where to put my hands. She noticed before I did. "You always choose the wobbly one," she said one morning, nodding at the table as she slid my coffee across. "It's brave. Or lazy." I smiled because that felt like the correct response. She smiled back, quick, like she hadn't meant to. Then she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and looked past me, already moving on. Her name was Mara. Mid-40s, maybe older if she'd had a hard year. Or younger if she hadn't. I wasn't good at guessing ages unless I was trying not to. She owned the house I rented a room in. Technically my landlady. But in the coffee shop, she was just someone who remembered my order without asking. Black coffee. No lid. Sit by the window. I'd started coming later on purpose, stretching my mornings so our paths crossed. I told myself it was coincidence, that my phone alarm was unreliable, that traffic had changed. Small lies, barely worth counting. She didn't flirt. That's what made it worse. Sometimes she'd ask how work was, and I'd say fine, even though it wasn't, because the truth would have taken too long. Sometimes she'd forget to charge me, and then catch it halfway through my cup, laugh under her breath, and wave it off like it wasn't worth fixing. When she laughed, she looked down at the counter, like she didn't want to be seen enjoying it too much. I noticed things I didn't have a use for. The way she folded napkins into tight squares when it was slow. How her eyes flicked to people's hands before their faces. How she always wore the same silver ring on her right hand, never the left. At home, in my room, I left messages unsent. To friends who lived in other cities. To my sister, who would have asked too many questions. I'd type something, stare at it, then lock my phone and put it face down like it could embarrass me if it stayed lit too long. Mara lived downstairs. We passed each other in the hallway sometimes, polite, careful. She smelled like laundry soap and coffee. Once, when I dropped my keys, she bent to help and we both reached at the same time, hands almost touching, then pulling back like we'd brushed a hot surface. "Sorry," she said. "Yeah," I said. Then, because silence felt heavier than noise. "I mean, no problem." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes that time. That morning, the coffee shop was quieter than usual. Rain pressed against the windows, blurring the street into soft streaks. Mara handed me my cup and hesitated, fingers still around the handle. I watched her hands instead of her face, the faint tremor she probably didn't know was there. "You okay?" I asked. She looked up, surprised, like I'd caught her mid-thought. "Yeah, just tired." She let go of the mug too quickly. Coffee sloshed, barely missing my sleeve. I sat at my table and tried to read the same paragraph 3 times. When I glanced up, she was turned away, shoulders slightly hunched, talking to no one. There was something different about her posture, like she was bracing. My phone buzzed. A message. From her. "Hey, can we talk later? About the house. It's nothing bad. I just left something where you'll see it." I stared at the screen, my heart thudding loud enough that it felt rude. Through the window, the rain kept falling, steady and indifferent. When I looked back up, Mara was watching me, her expression careful, almost closed. She lifted her hand in a small, unsure wave. I didn't wave back right away. I just nodded, once, and wondered what I'd been missing all this time, and what I was about to see. When I got home that evening, the house felt different, quieter in a way that wasn't normal quiet, more like something had been turned down instead of off. I kicked my shoes under the bench and stood there longer than necessary, listening. Downstairs, a kettle clicked, then went still. Her door was open. I didn't knock right away. I don't know what I expected to see, something dramatic, maybe, to justify the way my chest had tightened all afternoon. Instead, it was just Mara's living room, half lit by a lamp she never moved. A stack of folded laundry on the couch. A framed photo face down on the table, like it had been set there mid-decision. "You can come in," she said, without turning around. She was at the counter, pouring hot water into 2 mugs. Tea bags already waiting. Chamomile, I noticed. She always chose things meant to calm. I wasn't sure if you got the message, she added. I did, I said. My voice sounded too loud. I closed the door behind me more carefully than usual. She slid 1 mug toward me and wrapped her hands around the other. Didn't drink. Just held it, letting the steam fog her glasses. She'd changed since the morning. Soft sweater, sleeves pushed up, hair pulled back loosely like she'd done it twice and given up halfway. I didn't mean to make it sound strange, she said. There's something I should have picked up earlier. She gestured toward the table. That's when I saw it. A phone. Old model. Cracked corner. The case worn thin at the edges, like it had been gripped too hard too many times. It wasn't hidden exactly. Just placed there, deliberate. Waiting. I found it in the laundry room, she said. Behind the dryer. Must have fallen weeks ago. I nodded, though it wasn't mine. It's my son's, she added quickly. Then paused, like that explanation carried more weight than she meant it to. Oh, I said. And then, because I didn't know what else to do, I didn't know you had he's 21, she said. Lives with his dad now. She finally looked at me. There was something braced in her expression, like she was expecting me to flinch. I don't talk about him much, she continued. Feels strange sometimes. Like I'm admitting how old I am. You don't seem. I stopped myself. Restarted. I mean, you don't seem like someone who has a son your age, she finished gently. Heat crept up my neck. I took a sip of tea even though it was still too hot. Burned my tongue a little. Welcomed it. I'm divorced, she said quieter. In case that wasn't obvious. I shook my head. It wasn't. She smiled at that. Not pleased. Just tired. I kept the house, she went on. Rented out the rooms because it felt better than selling it. Like proof I was still here. I nodded again, too much. My hands tightened around the mug. I thought about my room upstairs. How temporary everything felt. How I'd told people I was just staying for a bit. Like that explained something. She reached for the phone and turned it over, face up. The screen was dark. He left it here on purpose, she said. During an argument. Said I was holding on to things that weren't mine anymore. I didn't respond. I didn't know where my words would land, and the silence felt safer. I was going to give it back, she said. Then I didn't. Then time passed, and it felt loaded. She laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. Just air escaping. I imagined scenarios I had no right to imagine. Her arguing with someone who looked too much like me, her hands shaking the way they had that morning, her alone in this room after everyone else had decided where they belonged. I think, I said slowly, people leave things behind when they're not ready to be done. She studied me for a moment. Not my face, my hands. Then her gaze lifted, steady and searching. That's a very generous way to see it. We sat like that, tea cooling between us. The clock over the stove ticked loudly, each second announcing itself. I felt the risk then, not sharp, not thrilling. Heavy. The way you feel standing too close to a ledge you didn't mean to approach. You should know, she said, after a while. This is complicated. I nodded. I figured. For you too, she added. Whether you think so or not. I know, I said, even though part of me didn't want to. She stood, gathering the mugs. As she passed me, her hand brushed my shoulder, barely there, like an apology more than a touch. But she didn't pull away right away. Just a second longer than necessary. I'm glad you came in, she said. The next few days rearranged themselves without asking me. I started waking earlier, not because I needed to, but because I wanted the quiet before the house decided what it was going to be. I could hear Mara downstairs sometimes, drawers opening, the low hum of the kettle. Other times, nothing. Those mornings felt longer. We didn't talk about the phone again. Instead, there were small adjustments. She switched to evening walks instead of mornings. I changed coffee shops once, then went back like nothing had happened. When we passed in the hallway, there was a half-second delay before either of us spoke, like we were waiting for the other to choose the tone. Hey, she'd say. Hey. That was it. I told myself that meant something. I also told myself it didn't. On Thursday, she knocked on my door. I hadn't been expecting it, which was obvious from the way it took me too long to answer. When I did, she stood there holding a small toolbox, hair pulled back tighter than usual, jaw set like she was bracing for resistance. "The light in the laundry room keeps flickering," she said. "I thought I'd fix it, but," she gestured vaguely, "you're taller." It was a stupid reason. We both knew it. I stepped aside anyway. We stood close in the narrow hallway, close enough that I could feel warmth coming off her arm. She smelled like soap and something citrusy underneath. She didn't look at me when she passed. The laundry room was cramped. One bare bulb, a stack of detergent bottles, the dryer humming softly like it was pretending not to listen. I climbed onto the small step stool. She handed me the bulb without touching my hand, careful, like she'd practiced the motion. "Just twist," she said. "I know," I said, then softer, "I've got it." She stepped back, but didn't leave. Leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. Watching. Not my face, my hands again. Always my hands. I twisted the bulb. It flickered once, then steadied. "There," I said. "Should be fine." "Thank you," she said immediately. Too quickly, like she didn't want the moment to stretch. I climbed down. The space felt smaller now that I was on the ground. We stood there, neither of us moving. The dryer clicked off. Silence rushed in, louder than before. "You don't have to keep helping," she said suddenly. "With things like this." I frowned. "I don't mind." "I know. That's not," she stopped. Restarted. "I don't want you to feel like you owe me anything." I didn't answer right away. I watched her thumb rub the edge of the toolbox, over and over. A nervous habit she probably didn't notice. "I don't," I said. "I just like being useful." She looked up then. Really looked. Her expression softened, then tightened, like she'd seen something she didn't want to name. "That's dangerous," she said quietly. "For who?" She didn't answer. That night, I stayed in my room longer than usual. Phone in my hand. Screen dark. I imagined texting her. Something casual, something safe. "Lights holding up. Or let me know if it flickers again." I typed. Deleted. Typed again. Locked the phone. I heard voices downstairs later. A man's voice. Familiar, but not friendly. Laughter that felt practiced. Her ex, maybe. Or a friend. Or someone who knew her in a way I didn't. I didn't go down. The next morning, Mara avoided my eyes at breakfast. She moved around the kitchen with purpose, collecting dishes that didn't need collecting, straightening things that were already straight. The man was gone. The air felt bruised. "You okay?" I asked lightly. She nodded too fast. "Fine." I waited. She didn't elaborate. I left for work with the taste of unfinished things sitting heavy in my mouth. It was Sarah who noticed first. "You live with a cougar now?" she asked, smirking, when I mentioned the coffee shop offhand. I froze. "What?" "She's always looking at you," Sarah continued. "Like she's trying not to." I laughed, because that felt safer than asking how she knew. "You're imagining things." "Am I?" She raised an eyebrow. "Just saying. Be careful." The word stuck with me all day. Careful. Like there was a right way to do this, whatever this was. That evening, Mara was in the backyard, trimming a plant that didn't need trimming. The sun was low, turning everything softer than it deserved to be. I hesitated at the door, then stepped out. "Hey," I said. She startled slightly. "Oh, hi." I pointed at the plant. "That one's already dead." She looked at it, then laughed, short and surprised. "I know." We stood there, side by side, not touching, too aware of the space between us. "I shouldn't have had him over," she said suddenly. I blinked. "You don't need to explain." "I do," she said. Then quieter. "I don't want you getting the wrong idea." "What idea?" I asked, even though my heart had already started guessing. She turned toward me. The setting sun caught the lines around her eyes, the honesty she didn't usually let show. "That I'm available," she said. "Or confused. Or looking for." She stopped. Swallowed. I took a step closer before I could stop myself. "Not touching. Just closer." "I don't think you're confused," I said. "I think you're careful." Her breath caught. I saw it. Felt it. "That's the same thing," she whispered. We were close enough now that I could see the small scar near her jaw. Close enough that stepping back would have been obvious. She lifted her hand, then hesitated, let it hover near my arm. Fingers curled like they were holding something fragile. Her eyes dropped to my mouth, just for a second. Long enough. I leaned in without deciding to. Or maybe I decided and didn't want to admit it. She didn't move away. She didn't move closer either. Mara, I started. She pressed 2 fingers lightly against my chest. Not pushing, just stopping me. I can't, she said. Not firmly. Not weakly. Just honest. I nodded, though it took effort. My heart was loud. Impatient. Her hand lingered a moment longer than necessary before dropping away. I know, I said, and meant something, even if I didn't know what yet. She looked at me then. Really looked, and for a split second, it felt like we'd already crossed something invisible. Then she stepped back. I should go inside, she said. I watched her walk away, the space between us closing behind her like nothing had almost happened at all. The night it finally tilted, nothing was supposed to happen. I was coming home later than usual, the sky already dark, the air cooler than it had been all week. I'd taken the long way on purpose, walked past the bus stop, and kept going until my legs felt tired enough to justify the thoughts looping in my head. When I reached the house, the porch light was on. Mara was sitting on the steps, not waiting exactly, just there. Jacket pulled tight around her, phone dark in her hand. She looked up when she heard me, and the relief that crossed her face was quick, almost embarrassed by itself. Hey, she said. Hey, I said back. I slowed without thinking. Sat a step below her, leaving space. Too much space. She noticed. You didn't come home yesterday, she said. I shrugged. Worked late. She nodded, like she'd expected that answer. Like she'd practiced accepting it. For a while, we just listened to the street. A car passed. Someone laughed somewhere down the block. Ordinary sounds doing ordinary things. I folded my hands together, then unfolded them, then rested them on my knees so they'd stop moving. I saw you with someone, she said suddenly. I turned. What? At the coffee shop, she clarified. A woman. Younger. Oh, coworker, I said. She talks too much. Mara smiled at that, faint and crooked. It didn't last. I know I don't get to feel anything about it, she said. I still on the street. That's not what this is. What is it? I asked. She exhaled slowly. That's the problem. I'm not sure anymore. The word anymore sat between us, heavy. I thought about the way she'd pressed her fingers to my chest days ago. Not pushing, just stopping. Like she'd been testing the strength of a door. I don't want to be someone who confuses you, she said. Or uses you to feel less alone. You don't, I said immediately. Too fast. She looked at me then, really looked, like she was measuring the truth of it against something older and sharper. You're young, she said quietly. You still think intensity means honesty. I swallowed. And you think restraint means safety. She flinched, not much, but enough that I saw it. Enough that guilt flickered through me, quick and hot. That's not fair, she said. I know, I said. I'm sorry. Another pause. Longer this time. I miss being wanted, she said. Not dramatically, just stated. Like a fact she'd carried for a while and finally set down. Not chased. Not admired. Just wanted. By someone who doesn't already know how the story ends. My chest tightened. I wanted to say something careful. Something that wouldn't tip us over. Instead, I said the thing that had been sitting behind my teeth for days. I want you, I said. The words didn't echo. They didn't sound impressive. They just existed between us, bare and quiet. Mara closed her eyes. For a moment, I thought she might cry. Instead, she laughed softly, like the sound surprised her. See, she said. That's what scares me. I shifted closer without meaning to. Or maybe I did. My knee brushed hers. Neither of us moved away. I don't think you're fragile, I said. I think you're tired. She opened her eyes. There was something exposed there now. No guard. No practiced calm. And I think you don't know what it costs, she said. To open something you've already closed once. I imagined it then. Not the kiss, but everything after. The mornings. The looks. The way this house would change shape around us. The way leaving would hurt worse than staying ever had. Mara, I said. Her name felt different now. Heavier. She turned toward me fully. Our faces were close enough that I could feel her breath, steady but shallow. She lifted her hand, hesitated, then let her fingers rest against my jaw. Not holding. Just there. Her thumb moved once. Barely. If I let myself, she began. Then stopped. If. The word hung there, unfinished. Her eyes searched mine, like she was looking for permission or warning or something neither of us could name. I leaned in a fraction. Not enough to cross the line. Enough to admit I knew where it was. She didn't pull away. She didn't close the distance either. And in that suspended moment, her hand on my face, my heart loud and unsteady, I wondered the thing neither of us asked out loud. Who would we be tomorrow if we didn't stop now? The shift didn't announce itself. It just happened. Mara stopped sitting on the porch at night. The porch light stayed off. Her walks moved to the early mornings again. Before I woke up, before the house had a chance to remember what almost happened. If we crossed paths, it was accidental in the most deliberate way. A nod, a polite smile, the kind you give a neighbor you don't plan on knowing any better. I told myself it was normal, necessary, even. It still felt like something had been removed without warning. At the coffee shop, her apron hung behind the counter, but she wasn't there. Someone else handed me my drink, asked for my order like it was the first time. I stood at the window anyway, drank half the cup cold, and left without finishing. I stopped going after that. Days passed, then more days. The house learned a new rhythm. Quieter, but not peaceful. Like a room after furniture's been moved. Echoes where something used to be. I thought about texting her more times than I admitted to myself. Each message started the same way. Hey, just wanted to check in. Or did I say something wrong? Or worse, I miss you. That one never made it past my thumbs. Instead, she texted first. I'm sorry if this feels abrupt. I just need some space right now. No explanation. No punctuation at the end. Like she'd pressed send before she could change her mind. I stared at it longer than I should have. Long enough for my phone screen to dim. Long enough to notice my reflection faintly staring back. I typed, of course. I understand. Deleted it. Type take all the time you need. Deleted that too. In the end, I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care. Because I cared too much, and anything I said would have leaned in a direction she was clearly trying to step away from. That night, I heard her crying. Not loudly. Just enough to know it was happening. Through the thin floor, the sound came in pieces, breaths caught mid-inhale, the occasional sharp exhale like she was trying to keep it contained. I sat on my bed, shoes still on, hands pressed flat against my thighs like I could ground myself through them. I didn't go down. The next morning, there was a car in the driveway I didn't recognize. I watched from the window as a man unloaded boxes from the trunk. Same age as Mara, maybe a little older. Familiar in a way that didn't feel new. He moved through the house like he knew where things belonged. Later, when I came home, the door to her living room was open. I caught a glimpse of the face-down photo again, now upright. A family picture. Mara younger. A man with his arm around her. A teenage boy between them, taller than both, smiling in a way that felt inherited. Her son. The phone was gone. That evening, she knocked on my door. I didn't answer right away. Not because I wasn't there. Because I needed the extra seconds to decide who I was about to be. When I opened it, she looked steadier. Not calmer. Just resolved in a way that felt heavier. My ex is staying for a few days, she said. Our son's coming by tomorrow. There were things we needed to talk through. Okay, I said. She hesitated. I didn't want you blindsided. I appreciate that. Another pause. The space between us felt wider now, like something had stretched it without asking. I'm sorry, she said, about how I handled things. You don't need to be, I said, though part of me wanted to argue. Wanted to say you disappeared. Wanted to say you mattered. She nodded, but her eyes didn't lift. I think, she said slowly, I wanted to pretend I could choose something uncomplicated. And then I remembered I don't live that way anymore. I didn't respond. Not because I disagreed. Because I understood. She lingered, like she was waiting for me to say something that would either stop her or send her away cleanly. I stayed quiet. Eventually, she smiled, small, sad, and stepped back. "Good night," she said. "Good night." She walked away. Her door closed softly, final in a way that felt practiced. Later, I sat at my desk and opened my phone again. Typed her name. Let it sit there, blinking. If things were different, I stopped. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. The message stayed unsent. Downstairs, a chair scraped softly. Voices murmured. Laughter, careful, measured, trying to sound normal. I lay back on my bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the house hold everything we hadn't said, and wondered how long a moment could last before it turned into something else entirely. The house emptied itself on a Sunday afternoon. Her ex's car was gone by the time I came back from the grocery store, the driveway looking wider than it should have. I stood there for a moment longer than necessary, keys in my hand, listening. No voices, no movement, just the wind pushing a dry leaf across the concrete, like it was undecided too. Inside, the kitchen light was on. Mara stood at the counter, cutting vegetables she didn't seem to need. The radio played softly, something old and forgettable. She didn't turn around when I came in, just nodded once, like she'd felt me arrive before she heard it. "You don't have to help," she said. "I know," I said. I set the bags down anyway, unloaded them slowly, giving us time to find the right distance. There was only one spot at the counter that didn't feel crowded. I took it. For a while, we worked without speaking. Knife against cutting board. Paper rustling. The ordinary sounds of two people pretending this was just another afternoon. "I'm sorry I disappeared," she said finally. I kept my eyes on the apples I was rinsing. "I figured you needed space." "That's not the same thing," she said. "No," I agreed. "It's not." She stopped cutting. I felt it before I saw it. The shift in the room, the way stillness moved closer. "I didn't trust myself," she said. "That's the truth. Not you. Me." I turned then. She was leaning on the counter, hands flat, shoulders tense. Older than she'd looked the first day I met her. Braver too. "I started imagining things I didn't have a right to imagine," she went on. "Mornings. Conversations. The way it would feel to not be alone for a while." My chest tightened. "You're allowed to want that." She shook her head. "Wanting is easy. Choosing is where I fail." I didn't argue. I didn't rush to reassure her. I just stepped closer, slow enough that she could stop me if she wanted to. "You didn't fail," I said. "You stopped before it became something you couldn't carry." She looked at me then. There were tears in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. That felt intentional. "And you?" she asked. "What did you carry?" I swallowed. "Hope. Confusion. A lot of silence." She nodded. "I saw that." We stood there, the counter between us like a line neither of us wanted to admit was necessary. I reached out, not to touch her, but to move a bowl she was about to knock over. Our hands brushed. This time, neither of us pulled away. Her fingers curled slightly around mine. Not tight, not claiming, just enough to say I'm here. "I care about you," she said. "In a way that isn't fair." "I know," I said. "I care too." The words felt heavier than they should have. Like admitting them meant acknowledging what they couldn't become. She let go of my hand first, stepped back, took a breath like she was steadying herself against something invisible. "I can't be the thing you build around," she said quietly. "I don't want to be a chapter you outgrow." I nodded. It hurt. Not sharply, more like a slow pressure. "I don't want to be your escape," I said. "Or your regret." She smiled at that. Real this time. Soft. Grateful. "Then we're choosing the same thing," she said. We stood there for another moment, neither of us reaching for more. The radio crackled. The song ended. "I'm going to move out next month," I said. The decision surprised me as it left my mouth. Not because of this. Just because it's time. Her eyes flickered. Sadness. Relief. Both. "That's probably good," she said. "Yeah." She hesitated, then stepped forward, closed the space, rested her forehead briefly against my shoulder. Just a second, long enough to matter. Short enough not to break anything. Thank you, she whispered, for not making this harder than it already was. I rested my hand lightly on her back. Didn't pull her closer. Didn't let go right away. Okay, I said. She pulled back, wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand, embarrassed but not ashamed. Okay, she echoed. We returned to the counter. Finished what we'd started. Two people doing something ordinary, having chosen something difficult. When I left the kitchen, she didn't watch me go. But I felt the weight of that quiet connection stay with me, steady and human, like we'd finally said enough. Got it. I'm locked into the time, did what neither of us tried to force. I moved out the following month, into a smaller place closer to work. It had thin walls and a kitchen window that faced another building, but it was mine. The first morning there, I made black coffee and drank it standing up because I didn't own a table yet. It tasted wrong without the familiar hum of that old refrigerator, without the chipped mug she used to slide toward me. At 8:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. Tea came out too strong today, Mara texted. I forgot how much you hate that. I smiled into the empty room. We didn't rush back toward each other. That was the unspoken rule. We let weeks pass between conversations sometimes. Other times, we talked 3 days in a row about nothing. Work frustrations, a show she was watching, a bench in the park near her house that had finally been fixed after months of wobbling. When we met, it was neutral ground at first. A public park. A bookstore where we pretended to browse separate sections, but always ended up in the same aisle. She still drank tea. I still ordered black coffee. We never joked about it. Some habits don't need commentary. The age gap didn't disappear. Neither did the past. Her son still called, sometimes unexpectedly. My life kept stretching forward in ways I didn't fully understand yet. But the difference now was that nothing felt hidden. One afternoon, months later, we sat on that park bench, the repaired one, steady at last. Leaves collected around our feet. She had her hands folded in her lap, thumbs touching. I noticed she didn't fidget anymore. You look different, I said. Older, she asked, amused. No, I said. More here. She considered that. I feel less split. She reached for my hand then. No hesitation. No testing. Just a choice made quietly and held. We didn't kiss right away. That came later, after more walking, more talking, more moments where neither of us flinched when the other leaned in emotionally. When it finally happened, it was unremarkable in the best way, soft, brief, followed by laughter that surprised us both. Life didn't become easier overnight. Some mornings were heavy. Some nights still carried doubt. But the house no longer held what we hadn't said. The silence between us wasn't loaded anymore. We built something slower than desire and stronger than guilt. On weekends, she'd come over with groceries she claimed she had extra of. She still cut vegetables she didn't need. I still helped, standing too close, stealing pieces of apple before she could stop me. Sometimes, when the kettle clicked off, she'd forget to move for a second. Just stand there, listening, like she was making sure the sound didn't mean anything else. It didn't. One morning, much later, we went back to that coffee shop. The table still wobbled. I chose it anyway. She didn't work there anymore. That chapter had closed cleanly. She sat across from me instead, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. You still come here at the same time, she said. Some habits survive, I said. She smiled. Not careful, not guarded, just warm. At 8:47 a.m., exactly, she reached across the table and brushed her thumb over my knuckles. A private gesture, small enough that no one noticed. I thought about all the moments that almost broke us. The porch steps, the flickering light, the hand on my chest that stopped me when stopping was the kindest thing she could do. I understood it differently now, not as distance, as care. When we left, she tucked her arm into mine without thinking. It fit the way things fit when they've been handled enough to know their shape. Later that night, she poured tea. I poured coffee. We sat in the quiet, the comfortable kind, where nothing needed to be fixed. This feels steady, she said. Yeah, I said. It does. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Not because she needed to, because she wanted to. And I realized then that love didn't arrive loudly for us. It settled. It stayed. It learned our routines and didn't ask us to become someone else. Just to show up. And I won't resolve it prematurely. Everything so far is aligned. Time did what neither of us tried to force. I moved out the following month, into a smaller place closer to work. It had thin walls and a kitchen window that faced another building, but it was mine. The first morning there, I made black coffee and drank it standing up because I didn't own a table yet. It tasted wrong without the familiar hum of that old refrigerator, without the chipped mug she used to slide toward me. At 8:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Tea came out too strong today," Mara texted. "I forgot how much you hate that." I smiled into the empty room. We didn't rush back toward each other. That was the unspoken rule. We let weeks pass between conversations sometimes. Other times, we talked 3 days in a row about nothing. Work frustrations, a show she was watching, a bench in the park near her house that had finally been fixed after months of wobbling. When we met, it was neutral ground at first. A public park. A bookstore where we pretended to browse separate sections, but always ended up in the same aisle. She still drank tea. I still ordered black coffee. We never joked about it. Some habits don't need commentary. The age gap didn't disappear. Neither did the past. Her son still called, sometimes unexpectedly. My life kept stretching forward in ways I didn't fully understand yet. But the difference now was that nothing felt hidden. One afternoon, months later, we sat on that park bench, the repaired one, steady at last. Leaves collected around our feet. She had her hands folded in her lap, thumbs touching. I noticed she didn't fidget anymore. "You look different," I said. "Older?" she asked, amused. "No," I said. "More here." She considered that. "I feel less split." She reached for my hand then. No hesitation. No testing. Just a choice made quietly and held. We didn't kiss right away. That came later, after more walking, more talking, more moments where neither of us flinched when the other leaned in emotionally. When it finally happened, it was unremarkable in the best way, soft, brief, followed by laughter that surprised us both. Life didn't become easier overnight. Some mornings were heavy. Some nights still carried doubt. But the house no longer held what we hadn't said. The silence between us wasn't loaded anymore. We built something slower than desire and stronger than guilt. On weekends, she'd come over with groceries she claimed she had extra of. She still cut vegetables she didn't need. I still helped, standing too close, stealing pieces of apple before she could stop me. Sometimes, when the kettle clicked off, she'd forget to move for a second. Just stand there, listening, like she was making sure the sound didn't mean anything else. It didn't. One morning, much later, we went back to that coffee shop. The table still wobbled. I chose it anyway. She didn't work there anymore. That chapter had closed cleanly. She sat across from me instead, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. "You still come here at the same time," she said. "Some habits survive," I said. She smiled. Not careful, not guarded, just warm. At 8:47 a.m., exactly, she reached across the table and brushed her thumb over my knuckles. A private gesture, small enough that no one noticed. I thought about all the moments that almost broke us. The porch steps, the flickering light, the hand on my chest that stopped me when stopping was the kindest thing she could do. I understood it differently now. Not as distance, as care. When we left, she tucked her arm into mine without thinking. It fit the way things fit when they've been handled enough to know their shape. Later that night, she poured tea. I poured coffee. We sat in the quiet, the comfortable kind, where nothing needed to be fixed. "This feels steady," she said. "Yeah," I said. "It does." She leaned her head against my shoulder. Not because she needed to, because she wanted to. And I realized then that love didn't arrive loudly for us. It settled. It stayed. It learned our routines and didn't ask us to become someone else. Just to show up.